So as always, once a week we speak on the Parsha of the week, and everything is basically, it's based on the Rebbe's Sichos, and also based on things that we here are dealing with, and what we need to, an insight that we need to learn, need to understand, how to progress in our own development, our own lives. You know, surely, that the Parsha of the week, we have two Parshas. Again, Parshas Matoss and Massey. And with this, actually, we conclude the Chumash Bamidbar. And with this, actually, we conclude essentially the Torah.
The whole Torah, yeah.
Because Chumash Dvarim is already a repetition, a recap. So we will try to focus on one inyan in the Parsha, and then we'll see, if time allows, we'll talk more. The beginning of the two Parshas are Matoss and Massey. Massey, which is the second Parsha, clearly defines, the word, the name itself defines what it's about. Because in this Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu recounts all the entire journey that he took from Mitzrayim. You understand English well? From Mitzrayim all the way to Ever HaYarden, to the banks of the Yarden, ready to cross over the Yarden. And this was not just for historical purposes, as Rashi explains, that each place had its specific significance, a specific occurrence, what happened there, and how Eden felt, and how Eden... all of these steps, 42 stops, each one of them represented another growth pattern in the Jewish nation. As a matter of fact, there is a Kabbalah from the Baal Shem Tov, that just as the Jewish people, as they journeyed from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, they had 42 Massois. Every individual person goes through 42 different stages in his life to get to the ultimate purpose. So that's Massey. And then in Parshas Massey, of course, it speaks about the final touches of how Eden, what pieces of what demarcation of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Eretz Yisrael, and how Eden was supposed to establish the land, the Or Miklot with the cities of refuge. Everybody knows what that is. You'll know in a couple of days, and so forth. Matoss, the word Matoss means tribes. And it's speaking about Roshei HaMatos, the heads of tribes. And the first mitzvah in this Parsha, in the Parshas Matoss, is the mitzvah of Nedorim. And basically, mitzvah Nedorim consists of two parts. One is a very simple statement, which is only one posuk in the whole parsha, that when a person makes a vow, he has to keep it. Simple. He makes a nether, he has to keep it. The rest of the parsha, many psukim speak about how to nullify, how to annul a vow. How to nullify, annul. Everybody knows what annul means? To be matir haneder, to take away the nether. Excuse me? So we want to understand this whole phenomenon. It's Parshas Nedorim, and the Parshas Nedorim primarily speaks about how to annul the vow, not how to make a vow. One word. Kol whatever comes out from his mouth he should do, and that's the end of the story as far as the neder is concerned. In Nedorim, in general, when we speak about Nedorim, the minute somebody learns about Nedorim making vows, what comes to mind is that a person wants to make a vow in order to safeguard, to protect himself against mistakes. He feels that he has got a very strong drawing in something pushing him to do the wrong thing, so he makes a vow. And this vow protects him, helps him to overcome this urge. The Gemara tells a story that there was you know that amongst the vows there is also a vow of a Nazir, a Nazirite. A Nazir is one who for 30 days he's not allowed to cut his hair, but after 30 days he has to cut his hair completely, and the hair gets burned in the Asor. And during these 30 days he has a kedusha, he is holy in many ways. He's not allowed to become tomei and so forth. So the Gemara tells us a story that a Nazir came to this Rabbi, I think Rabbi Shmuel, and he came to be magid because a Nazir has to bring korbanos and so forth when the Naziris is finished. And this man, he was a young man, he was very handsome, and he had very beautiful hair. And in those days, men also wore long hair. So he asked him, "My son, why did you do this to cut off your beautiful locks?" So he said that one time I was standing by a river and I noticed my own reflection from the water. In other words, this boy was not standing in front of the mirror on the daily looking at himself. But it happened that he was passing a river and he saw his image in the river. And at that moment, when I saw myself, I was impressed with what I looked like. And the Yetzer Hora, it says, Zokin of Sil came and wanted to, they said, he wanted to destroy my life. In other words, he started urging him to go and enjoy the world, enjoy life. So when I felt like that, I said, I promise that I'm going to cut you off, Lashomayim. So I won't have this temptation. So the Shmuel said, this is the kind of Nazirus that is praiseworthy. This is the kind of Nazirus. Because in fact, the Gemara says that really one should not make Nedorim. One should make Nedorim only when it makes sense, when it is in exceptional situations. Because, as the Gemara says, Lo'dayach ma she'osra Torah. Isn't that enough what the Torah forbade? You have to make more prohibitions, make it more difficult. Be careful with everything that the Torah forbade. And that will be enough. That's enough difficulty, enough challenge. But if a person makes a neder in order to safeguard himself against the Yetzer Hara, that is really a praiseworthy thing. That's really a very good thing. So, from a simple perspective, it would appear that the whole meaning of Nedorim is the Nedorim that this Pasha speaks about, because there are other Nedorim where a person promises to bring a korban or something like that. This is a different thing. A person promises to give tzedakah. That doesn't go into this category, because there he's doing a mitzvah. He's giving tzedakah. He's bringing a korban. But here he's making a neder that doesn't consist in a mitzvah. He says, "I'm not going to eat this." Does nothing to do with the mitzvah. I'm not going to go there. This kind of things. person makes a neder, I'm not going to speak for the next 24 hours. If he got used to speaking Lashon Hara, he wants to stop himself with Lashon Hara, next 24 hours I don't speak. Just to train himself to watch out what he says. So this is the type of Nedarim we're talking about. And the person is trying to control his impulses.
Isn't it also considered the Kedra of Mitzvah because he's guarding himself from prohibition?
So again?
Isn't that also considered also a mitzvah, like saying, I'm going to donate this much to tzedakah, that's a mitzvah. Also guarding against sin is also a mitzvah.
Yeah, but that's guarding against sin. That's not a mitzvah, positive mitzvah when he says doing a mitzvah. Yes, guarding against sin, the person they are enjoined not to do sin. But this is the positive part of the negative of loisas. Every time a person, the Gemara says, every time that a person does not do a yoshav loy over aveiro, nisin is chaki also mitzvah. He didn't do an aveiro, so he has schar as if he did a mitzvah, but it's a mitzvah coming from the negative. So essentially, it's a negative aspect. But when he gives a korban, there's no question why he gives a korban. It's a mitzvah to a person to give a korban. He gives tzedakah. We have no question about that. But these nedarim that this pasha speaks about are just in the category of essentially le'aseh isur al nafsh, to create some kind of additional prohibition that is normally permitted, and he makes that prohibition. He accepts a prohibition, something that he should not do. Everybody understand so far? Maya? Within this category itself of lesser isur, to make a prohibition, there are also two types. There is a shvuah and a neder. The difference between a shvuah and neder, briefly, a shvuah is something that a person obligates himself. I promise to do such and such. So it's an obligation on the person. This is called choivas gavra, the obligation on the person. Then there is another type where he makes a neder and he says that this article should be considered like it is a holy thing, like it's a korban. Just like I'm forbidden to eat a korban, so too I will forbidden to eat this apple. Not because the apple is a korban. The apple is a piece of apple, is a regular apple. But to me, this will be like a korban. It will have a quality as if it is holy, belongs, and we are not allowed to eat it. This is the other type. So the dustanda, and this is what the Pasuk says: Yidoir neder, le'asor isur. Yidoir neder, the Gemara says that is matris bedover hanodur. In other words, he says that this should be considered like something that the person gave a neder to Beis Hamikdash, even though he's not giving it to Beis Hamikdash. But it should be considered like something that is given to Beis Hamikdash. That's lindei neder. Then le'aseh isur it makes it prohibited for him to eat. And there's a big difference between these two. Le'aseh isur, I said, is there's no kedusha, nothing applies to the article itself, to the apple itself. The apple is the same apple as before, but he is forbidden to eat it, like a shvuah, a promise. But when he's allowed yidur neder, then this is to him considered like something holy, and it has a holiness in it. In this aspect of Leah. Huh?
No, just him?
Okay. No, it could be both. This is what I was going to say. In the case of a shvuah, lesser isur, a person cannot make something forbidden to someone else. You know, it's an isur on himself, but he cannot obligate someone else not to eat. But if it's his article, and he says that this article should be considered kodesh, should be considered holy to everyone, That he can do. He can do it, make it just to himself, but he can make it to everybody. So it's forbidden. Koinem, it's forbidden for anybody to eat because he has a Kedush. Now, we have to focus in and try to understand this. When we say about lesser Isur, he wants to make something forbidden, and we as we discussed before, that the whole principle of Nidorim is that he is trying to prevent himself, protect himself against his impulses. He shouldn't do something impulsively. So he makes a vow. He says, this is forbidden. What does it have to do with the Korban? If this is something which is enticing him to do the wrong thing, it's the opposite of a Korban. It's a Dover Osir, it's a bad thing. How is that reflected how is that connected to making it holy that's like a Korban? Understand the question?
Right, lesser Israel, so
Everybody understand the question? If we're talking about something that is drawing him to do the wrong thing, drawing him to do an Aveira, so he says, this should be forbidden to me. So we understand, because we're talking about preventing to doing something bad. It should be forbidden. But how does it become a holy thing? He was being drawn to do the wrong thing. We're doing the wrong thing. How does it become all of a sudden holy? How is it related to the other part of the Nidorim? To make it holy. So obviously, there is some kind of an implication here that has to do with holiness. It is Nidorim, and it has to do with holiness. And that is the following. There are two different aspects in a person's life. The Rebbe once spoke on Pirkei Avos. In Pirkei Avos it says, "Yistakil b'shloisha dvorim ve'irato bo lidei aveira." Which means he should focus in and think about three things, and this will protect you from coming to doing an aveira. And then it says what the three things are. So the Rebbe once spoke in a Sikha. Why does the mission have to divide it into two parts? You should look at three things, and it won't come to Aveira. And then it says what the three things are. Let it go straight and tell us what the three things. You should look at these three things. I don't know if you're familiar with this. And that you know it's three things. What's the point of giving us, look at three things? And the Rebbe explained a very important principle in our lives. Normally, a person thinks about himself. When he thinks about himself, he also thinks about his obligation to Hashem. He's watching, I have to be careful what I do, because I have to answer to the neighbors. And if I do the wrong thing, Chas v'sholom, I'll be punished. So there are two things he's concerned about, himself and the neighbors. What is the third thing? The mission says, no, there are three things. You have to focus in on three things. There are two things, yourself, the Rebbeinu, and there is the world. You have to recognize the world you live in. You have to look at three things. And this will put you on the path of a good life. So, in this Nidorim aspect, there is also this principle. There is lesser Isur. There's something that's enticing me, that's a taiva, and I know that I shouldn't do it, even if it's not forbidden. It's not an aveira, chas v'sholom, but it's just a person is indulging in food that he shouldn't, overindulging. So he says, I'm not going to eat. This is all talking about the world, the negativity of the world. And it's essentially concerned about himself. It's concerned about himself, that he should be doing the good, healthy things. Then there's another inyan. This is the inyan of Yidei Neder. What is Yidei Neder? Yidei Neder is like this. A person should recognize that he lives in the big world. And this world belongs to Hashem. This world was created by Hashem. This world is a glorious, divine creation. It's a godly creation. One has to be greatly respectful of God's creation. There's a story where the previous Rebbe was a child walking together with his father. They were taking a stroll in a garden. And the father, the Rebbe Rashab, was talking to the son, who was a little boy. During these walks, they had a tremendous amount of chinuch that took place during these walks, these strolls. And during that time, it was a beautiful spring day. They were walking through the garden, and the Rebbe, the father, the Rashab, was explaining to his son how we have to value everything that Rebbe created. And before you use anything in the world, you have to think: is it appropriate? Is it using it in a positive way or in a negative way? Because everything is Hashem's creation. Nothing is hefker. Nothing just belongs to the world, because the whole world belongs to Hashem. And as they're walking, the Rebbe, the son, who was a young boy, they're walking. He was involved in his thinking and listening to his father. He picked off a blade of grass. He just tore off a blade of grass, and he was walking, and he was crumbling the grass between his fingers. Like a person is doing, just turning a piece of grass out, just to keep his fingers occupied. It's a natural thing. And the father, the Rebbe Rashab, noticed this, and he stopped in the middle of his talk, and he said to his son, he says, take a look, and he called him by name, take a look how unconscious you are of what we are discussing. I'm just now finishing, just explaining to you how we have to regard and respect the Meibush's world. And you go and you pick up a blade of grass inadvertently, without any consideration, and you crumble it between your fingers. Okay, so this is a story that really a Rebbe is teaching a Rebbe, but we have to understand from this story to what extent the union of respecting the Meibush's world can go. The truth is that there's a mitzvah in the Torah. It's an isur in Shulchan Aruch. Lo tashchis. You're not allowed to destroy anything of value in the world.
That what?
Anything of value. Lo tashchis. Supposing in the Torah speaks about cutting down a fruit tree, but the halacha says that it includes everything, anything of value. Anything that is usable, anything of value is not allowed to be destroyed, unless it's being destroyed in order to make it better, in order to improve the situation. Like you destroy a house in order to build a bigger and nicer house, but just to destroy is not allowed.
What was the Frierdiker Rebbe's reaction to his father's words?
That I can only know from my imagination.
Rabbi.
We know the story from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Rishimus. The Frierdiker Rebbe kept a diary from early age on, from 9-year-old, even before. He kept a diary of everything that he heard. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was an exceptional writer. And this story he recorded. He did not say what his reaction was. I can tell you one thing, his reaction was the way it should have been. Now, leave it to the imagination. Yes, sure.
Is there a prohibition against like killing bugs?
No. Anything that bothers a person, interferes with a person's activity. I'm saying we're talking about just destruction for destruction's sake. But if it interferes with being able for a person to being able to learn and daven and eat and so forth, then sure the human being is the primary thing. This is what the whole world is about, doing mitzvahs. There are those people in our day who, they take one thing from the Torah, and then they go to an extreme, way out of whack, completely out of, insensitive, senseless levels. The Torah provides for everything the proper perspective. Everything has a value, but it has a limit. From this approach, from this perverted approach, we had such tragic situations where the Nazis, Ymach Shmom v'Zichrom, were giving tickets, were punishing people for carrying a chicken upside down, and at the same time they were slaughtering human beings like cockroaches. So everything has to have its proper perspective.
Did the Nazis go vegetarian?
They were cannibals. You know what a cannibal is?
Yeah.
Huh?
Cannibal with people, people, humans.
Okay, so coming back to our the Gemara says, for instance, there are things in the world of such exquisite refinement and value and quality that the world doesn't know how to value it, how to evaluate it. The precious stones that were in the Choshen Mishpot of the Kohen. Choshen Mishpot, everybody knows, and the Kohen Gadol, the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, and the two stones on his shoulders. This is where precious stones belong. As a result of the fact that they need it for the Beit HaMikdash, so it also is available in the world. The Gemara says the similar thing about gold. The world as such is not fit to use gold. Gold is of quality that does not have the limits, the worldly limits as we know them. The world, everything in the world is temporary. You have a steel beam. After years, the steel beam will also crumble. It will rust away, even if it's the best steel. Everything tarnishes. Silver tarnishes. You have copper, solid metal, it evaporates. Except for gold. Gold does not tarnish. Gold does not disintegrate. It's not affected by weather. It's not affected by your environment. Gold is a super worldly metal in the world.
What does that mean?
There are many things in our world that are represent, that have a quality of that are not measurable by worldly measurements. And the reason for these qualities in the world is to attest and to show us that this world is not really a natural world, it's a godly world. It exists because God wants it to exist. This is not something that exists, that just, like they say, developed from the Big Bang. This is a godly creation. One of these things, as it's explained in Chassidus, based on the Psukim Tanakh, is the sun. The sun, we all think the sun, oh, it's a hot ball, gives light, but we never really, we don't have a chance, we don't have the intelligence to look into it and to understand what the sun is. The light of the sun transforms the whole world. It doesn't bring light like a candle. A candle, you light the candle, and all the light the candle is able to is to light up this table. It doesn't change this place to daytime. Why not? Because the candle, in center of the candle is a wick. And the wick is not fire, it's not light. The wick burns. So the fire is only external. It's not the real thing. And it doesn't change the entire environment. The sun does not have a wick. The sun is fire through and through. It is light through and through. It's what's called in Chassidus etzem ha'oyer. It's an essence of light. And this is why when the sun comes to the world, it doesn't give light. When you say, oh, daytime, and the sun rose, you don't say, oh, so now I can see across the street. No. I see across the street, we can see with a lantern. The sun doesn't make you see across the street. It changes your whole perspective. Now it's daytime, it's a different time, a different period, a different situation completely. It's not night, it's day. No matter how many big lanterns and lamps you can put up, you'll not have day. You'll have light. But day you will not have. Day you can only have from the sun. The sun has been giving day to the world for 5,700 years. Straight. Never a moment regrouping. Okay, let me just take accounting what I have and restart. No, just giving light continuously, constantly. So you would think that over 5,000 years, close to 6,000 years, it would lose its potency, it would lose its strength. What is the world worried about today? Global warming, right?
Yeah.
Look at global warming. The sun is 5,000 years old. It should really take a little vacation. Nothing. What does that show us? It clearly shows us if we want to pay attention and think like a human being, become intelligent, we look at the sun, but we see something different. This is not just a physical fire. It exists because God wants it to exist. And as long as God will want it to exist, that's how long it's going to be. Just the way God wants it. This is showing clearly a godly presence in the world. I mentioned to you several times in the past of the instance. This is something which always stands up in my mind. It's a very, very illustrative. It very clearly and declares this point that someone in the early 60s and the late 50s, when there was the big competition, what's called the nuclear race between America and Russia. Huh? And everybody was scared. Everybody was scared because the Russians had no scruples. If, God forbid, they would think they can win a nuclear war, they would start it. They were talking about Stalin. They're not people of any kind of morals. And the world was scared. So someone asked the Rebbe at that time, and during those years, there is this the nuclear war, nuclear race. Is it possible that there should be a nuclear war? Is it possible? The Rebbe said that no one can predict history. And it's impossible to rule it out. Human beings, they haven't shown any limit as to what they're able to do. And yes, it's possible. Can't rule it out. It will be tragic, but can't rule it out. But then this person comes back to the Rebbe and says, in that case, the world will be destroyed. Right? In the nuclear war, the world will be destroyed. To that the Rebbe answered, that absolutely not. This cannot possibly be. No one can destroy the world. The world is indestructible. Just like it doesn't make sense how the sun doesn't diminish in its light, it doesn't make sense how the world is indestructible. Because, of course, you can destroy anything in the world. But the world as such is indestructible. The Jewish people are indestructible. Because the Jewish people cannot be killed. God forbid, Rahman Islam, they can be killed by the millions. But as a people, they're indestructible. Why? Because they represent God's will. And however, whatever it will be done, there's no way. There's no way that's indestructible. This is what our world is. In some places we see it clearly. In some places we don't see it. But we have to understand that everything, a blade of grass is also God's creation. And also has to be respected. It's not just nature. God forbid, there's no such thing as nature. Nature itself is a godly creation. And represents a godly will and a godly spirit. Soul. Like it says in Tanya, that everything in the world has a soul. Even the inanimate object has a soul. And now we come to understand this Yidoy Neder. When the person sees that he is less than appropriately respectful of the world has lost its value in his eyes. He's taking it for granted. He's abusing it. He's following his so to speak, natural impulsive inclination. So he goes and he says, this is holy. He declares it as a holy thing. By declaring it a holy thing, this brings back to his mind to recognize that this is not something to be played with. It's not just trying to protect himself against doing something wrong, against pursuing some kind of an impulse, of a taiva. It is to remind himself of the status of the world he is living in. This is what a neder is. There's two types of Dorim. There's the neder and then lesser Isur. Lesser Isur is the lower level. When a person is concerned about being drawn into doing the wrong things, into impulsive and the behavior. But Yidur Neder, this is on a different level. This is where the person wants to teach himself and train himself and get himself into the mindset to understand what this world is about. And the Torah says that a Yid, by virtue of his neshama, by virtue of what a Yid is, he too is a godly presence. No question about it. He is capable of imbuing holiness in a physical object. He is capable of revealing the holiness that is contained in this physical object. And saying, hey, this is holy. And I cannot use it. And then, of course, comes the Rav, or Rosh Hamatis, the heads of the tribes, like Rashi says, Chochem, Shleisha Hadyetis, Abezdin, they are mati the neder. They nullify the neder. This nullification of the neder is not just nullifying the neder. This nullification of the neder is to elevate the person to the level where he no longer needs the neder. Where he comes to the Rosh Hamatis, he can elevate the person and give him the strength to be able to relate to the world in a normal way without a neder, and yet recognize what the world is about with the proper respect. And we see in the Torah that the majority of the psukim, not the majority, all the psukim except for one speak about how to be matir neder. Because ultimately, the Hashem's will is not that a person should abstain. Hashem's will is a person should use the world, but use it in a proper way. Not in a way that the world draws him down into Gashmis, but in a way that he elevates the world and transforms the Gashmis into Ruchnis. So the ultimate and the real avodah is to elevate, not to have isurim, not to have prohibitions, but rather to elevate and to use the world in a proper way. This is why the whole emphasis in Parshas Nedorim is not Nedorim, but HaTorah's Nedorim. But we have to know that HaTorah's Nedorim has a certain function. In other words, HaTorah's Nedorim is not just be taken lightly. I mean, another, take it away. That's not, no, it has to be a Chochem. It has to be a Bezdin. Because there has to be that entity that is capable of giving him the strength to accomplish the benefit of the neder without a neder. Just to nullify the neder and let him go back to where he started from, that's not the point of Torah's Nedorim. That's why it's necessary. The emphasis is that's a Rosh Hamatis. And this is the Bezdin, Shleisha Hadyetis, Rashi says, and so forth. So, we spoke in generalities, the way the Indian is, and now I want to come back and translate it to us, to every individual here in Yeshiva, for our practical consumption, so to speak. There are two ways to look at everything in the world. In your in everyone in his own little world, in his own experience. There is the chitzonius and there is the pnimius. Everybody knows these two words, chitzonius and pnimius. Chitzonius means external and pnimius means internal. The chitzonius is how this object serves me. The pnimius is what this object itself is about. Like I always point out, a simple illustration to understand chitzonius and pnimius. If you have a feast, a chasana, and you come into a chasana hall and you have all kinds of tables and chairs, and you have place settings, and you have food, and you have all kinds of decorations, richness. So a cat comes into this place. What does a cat see? It says food. Doesn't see anything else. What does a human being see? Completely different thing. He sees what this is all about. What makes it be? Why is it decorated like this? What does it represent? There is a tremendous human spirit in this. And then beyond the human spirit, the godly spirit, the chasana, the greatest mitzvah. A completely different thing. His whole experience is totally different. We can look at our world. We can look at all our things. We can look at each other. Lahav like a cat or like a human being. The cat sees only what's in it for me. The cat has no idea that things are for real, that they have their own value. Has no idea that food has to be planted and food has to be processed, and there is labor involved, and there is bracha involved. He has no idea at all. That's why it's a cat. That's why it's an animal. That's why the animal, the human being, is boss over the animals. Because the human being is supposed to know something deeper. He's supposed to look at the world from a different perspective. Not just what's in it for me. He's supposed to look at the world, what's the world about? It's a real thing. It's a creation, a godly creation. What is it about? And this, what is it about? Permeates and it affects not just the big picture, but the small picture. Everyone's individual thing. We are required, for instance, by halacha, Baruch Hashem, that before we eat, we have to wash our hands. In addition to the cleanliness and all that, it's simply a hachana to eat, to know that this food is something that has a significance. It's not something you grab and put in your mouth. Before you go to eat, wash your hands. Prepare yourself. Sit down with respect. Make a bracha. This is something which was made and prepared for you. A cat grabs what's in there. I once explained, many times explained, I want to repeat it again because it's an important thing to understand, the principle of making a bracha on food. You pick up an apple and you hold the apple in your hand and you say Beira Prihoich and you eat it. So what's the point of making a bracha at this point? The apple is already in your hand. It's not being created now. It grew on the tree. And now it's been already brought into your own hand. Right? At most, you could say, Bora Prihois. He created. Bora means he's creating now. Loshen Haid. It's present tense. So what's meant he creates? However, the meaning of the bracha is something totally different. Hashem created all kinds of vegetations. On the third day of creation, Hashem created all kinds of vegetations. Everything. Eitz, pre, and so forth. And the sixth day, Hashem created Odom Orishin. When Hashem created Odom Orishin woke up, looked around, and he saw this big, beautiful world. Already. So what she has to do? Go and pick up the apples, start eating. That wasn't for Odom. Odom is not going to pick up an apple from the tree. It doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the tree. It's not for him. He's God's handiwork. He's going to be a scavenger, going into the garbage and picking up food. Going to the tree and picking up food. This is good for the cat, not for the Odom. What happened the next thing after he was created? Look in the Chumash. Hashem said to Odom, all this that I created it for you to eat. Now it became food. Before that, it's not food. What am I going to eat? It's not my worry. That's my worry. It's not my problem. The Rebbe created me, the Rebbe will make food for me. If need be, I won't need food. If need be, I'll eat mom. It has nothing to do with anything. I wasn't created to eat, I was created to serve Hashem. So when Hashem said, this is food for you to eat, that's when it became food. And therefore, when we hold an apple in our hands, that apple belongs to the tree. That apple is a piece of wood. When does it become food? When Hashem says this is food for you to eat. And that's the bracha. Thank Hashem for giving us this food to eat. And this becomes a bracha. Now, after the apple is already created, Hashem now declares this is for you to eat, and that's how come we eat it. This applies to everything that we use in the world. There's a reality to it. It applies when you eat, you have to eat with derech eretz. The Gemara says somebody walks in the street and eats. What does the Gemara say about it? Ha'echel b'shuk doime lekelev. Huh? I don't know, but that's a clear Gemara. Ha'echel b'shuk doime lekelev. And it makes sense. A kelev eats in the shuk. What a kelev is? Everybody knows what a kelev is? A dog.
Very strong language.
It's strong language, but it's precise language.
Yeah.
Okay, it's true. The Gemara doesn't mince words, because the Gemara says, "This is the Meibish's food. You're going to just run in the street and eat it? Come on, wash your hands, sit down, do something with the covered. Covered from the food and covered with the human being." The dog, for him, that's appropriate. What does a dog eat? He digs up garbage and eats. That's fine. But a human being? That's not what the Rebbe made it. The Rebbe gave him food, real food, on a platter. He should eat with covered in derech eretz. And this applies to absolutely everything that we have. It applies to our shoes, applies to our shirts, applies to our hats, to everything. The Gemara says, "A Talmid Chacham shenimtza revav al bigdei chayav misa." Talmid Chacham that has a stain on his garment. a stain. It's Chayav Misa. Doesn't mean literally Chayav Misa. It's a Chilul Hashem. And the Gemara certainly is not talking about a person going out and buying $1,000 suits. That's not important. The important is that it's neat and clean. That it's the COVID of the human, COVID habriyas. The Gemara Torah is very careful with COVID habriyas, and also COVID of the articles of the human of the person. The Gemara said the Rashi brings it down. Rashi brings it down in Chumash. Yankiv bin said by Yivoser Yankiv levado. But Yankiv was coming back from Lovan. I don't know if you know the whole story. Yankiv coming back from Lovan, and he crossed the river and brought everything over. And then he says, by Yivoser Yankiv levado. After that, Yankiv remained alone without anybody. All his sons, everybody was across the river, and he remained alone. Rashi says, what was he doing alone? He reminded himself that he forgot small vessels. Pachim Tan, he forgot small vessels. So forget it, the heck. I have plenty of them. I have $1 million. Forget about those vessels. No. Maybe she gave it to me. I have to go and fetch them. And he put himself in danger to go and fetch these vessels. Because it's my duty to safeguard them and to use them properly. Shochach pachim ktanim zul yigas.
It doesn't seem to weigh out.
Excuse me?
According to Pshat, it doesn't seem to really weigh out. He was lucky to be alive or to get out of there. Long children to risk everything to go back.
Tzaddikim have a special sense of responsibility for their object. You understand that? Because tzaddikim have to be mevarer everything in the world. And if he doesn't, then this pacht cotton is going to demand from him, how come you neglected me? And you didn't bring me back and do a mitzvah with me.
Midrash says that pop was the same one that
Yeah, exactly. And there are stories in the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov sent his Talmidim on various journeys, and he told them, over there is a spring and you should make a bracha. And so this spring is waiting since the creation that some Ayit should pass by and make a bracha on its waters. These are not simple things. But the important thing is, I'm not trying to build up any kind of dramatic things. I want that we should understand that it is a part of Avodas Hashem to recognize that everything that we have is not something that came from nature, came from mid-air. This is the Rebbeinu providing for us. And if the Rebbeinu is providing for it, we have to deal with it with respect. It was, and this is called essentially what's called derech eretz. This is called derech eretz. This is not a mitzvah, per se, but this is called derech eretz. And what does the Gemara say? Derech eretz kodmo l'Torah. Derech eretz precedes Torah. And why does derech eretz precedes Torah? Because in fact, in order for a person to understand Torah, one time I had a whole class on this slogan. I don't know if anybody was here at the time. In order to understand Torah, which is exclusively an intellectual understanding, there's nothing in the world that substantiates, built. The Torah is not built on anything in the world. The Torah is built entirely on godly concepts. In order to understand Torah, which is entirely built on the intellect, first you have to have an intellect to respect the world, see the world from an intellectual perspective. If you are sunk into Gashmis and you see the world as Gashmi, you cannot come to understand something intellectual. You could, it's an imaginary thing. Oh, it's all imaginary, it's all theory. But the Torah is not theory, theory is actual. In order that Torah should become actual, you have to first go through the stage where the derech eretz, that the world, you see the world also with some spirit or some value. Then you can come to the next stage of seeing something which is really super worldly, which is Torah. There are stages how a person's mind develops. And some other time, anyway, I want to, like we always do, I want to wish us all a bracha that we should all be successful to go through the stage of derech eretz, and then Torah, and then again derech eretz, and then Torah, because everything is relative. And we go from step to step to step. In every level there is the derech eretz part, and then there's the Torah part. There is the chitzonius part, and then there's the pnimius part. And we should hope and everybody should continue to grow, mechayil el choyil, and to develop both our derech eretz, develop our emotions, develop our intellect, and to be a healthy and strong Yidden to do Avodas Hashem and to bring Mashiach.
Amen.
Amen.